Hello, everybody, and we're here at the Unified Consciousness Project. So we get to have our next guest with us today, who is Christa Mackinnon. And Christa sees herself as a modern medicine woman. She's a psychologist, therapist, shamanic teacher, best-selling author, and activist. Previously working internationally as a complex trauma specialist, she shifted her focus to ancient wisdom teachings, apprenticing to indigenous shamans in South America, and learning from contemporary shamanic teachers in North America, Europe, and Asia. She's the author of 3 books combining the ancient shamanic with the contemporary therapeutic. She's also the founder of Bridging the Worlds, which trains therapeutic professionals in shamanic approaches, co founder of Women Weaving Change, which trains modern medicine women and sacred earth activism, an organization that combines earth centered spirituality with concrete activism within the ecological and sacred lands movement in the UK. So all of her work and sacred activism are firmly focused on contributing to the necessary expansion of consciousness and an overall shift in paradigm. So it's such a joy to have you here with us today, Krista. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim, for having me here and for inviting me. And it will be a pleasure to speak to you, I'm sure.
Yes, yes. So we're here, we're talking about unified consciousness. And I love that last line there in your little bio about the expansion of consciousness and creating that shift in our paradigm, which is what we're doing right now in the world. It's what we're going through.
Absolutely. And this is what we are hoping to contribute to whilst talking, and also your project, of course, doesn't it? Because this shift in consciousness, I always say that it will be a web we are weaving. You see, this will not just happen, but every single bit we are doing, which contributes it, will in the end take us to another level of consciousness and a so-called paradigm shift. And I don't know if you know, but or if most people know how a paradigm shift actually happens. Scientifically, it usually happens when the way we see the world and the way we treat the world and the way we are in the world doesn't work any longer, and more exceptions happen. One of the big exceptions which started to happen, for example, in physics was when we discovered quantum physics. And suddenly we had a paradigm shift, which had to come along in physics, that we are now speaking more about energies and the underlying realms, while before we just thought this is all there is. So a shift in paradigm, and especially a consciousness shift, comes along when more and more things people experience don't fit within the old template any longer. And every movement from, I would think, where we are now, from what's happening in nature at the moment to the long spell we had of the so-called New Age movement, which focused on expanding consciousness through all kind of meditation techniques and other techniques, to the movement of all these projects which are happening right now. All of this will contribute in a way to a shift in paradigm. And I think the shift will be that we are coming from, and I'm coming to unity and unified consciousness now, that we are going from where I don't know, I don't want to use the word three-dimensional consciousness because that's such a cliche, but that we are coming from a consciousness where we see ourselves as separated and separate everything, which is a three-dimensional consciousness to a higher consciousness that experiences and understands very, very deeply that everything is indeed connected. So I think this is what is happening, and I see most of our work as contributing to that, even if we don't say it directly in that way, you know. And I also feel that this is absolutely necessary. Looking at the state of the environment and what is happening on the planet and what we have produced, if we don't achieve that shift fairly soon, we are on quite a destructive road, to put it mildly. So another thing which of course always contributes to the shift of consciousness individually and collectively is the necessity to shift. And I think that was lovely when I listened to your little clip when you talk about the project, when you said that you are a survivor of abuse. I have worked with many, many survivors of trauma here, but also in Africa and Asia, in war zones, and with many abuse survivors, of course. And that shift is very often dictated by necessity. You just can't go on anymore as you were before. The hurt and the pain and the damage is too much, and you need to start working at it, or you give up and you destroy yourself. And I think this is what's happening on a collective level right now. So more and more people really begin to start really working at that consciousness. So coming just to that idea of a unified consciousness, I think it works on two levels. One is, of course, the individual level, that we need to, or that we are moving more and more towards experience ourselves as being that one thing. So, of course, people have a spectrum. Personality has a spectrum. I'm not always the same, and nor should I be. But that all of it, that whole spectrum is me. And working towards that I can accept the whole spectrum and comfortable in the whole spectrum, and that all of these parts work together in harmony. So this is a kind of, you know it and I know it, as abuse survivors, you know exactly what it means if they don't work in harmony. If there is one which gets dominant and gets triggered and then produces all kind of stuff. So once they work in harmony and we can say, really, this is actually me and I'm accepting it, and all my bits work together somehow. And then there is a consciousness which is of course much bigger. It's a universal consciousness. And for many people, this is the second step. That you can widen it, that you can move a bit away from the healing yourself into that expanded consciousness where you begin to understand and to feel and to really know it, that you are connected to all there is. And the last thing I want to say to that is, of course, then comes that moment, and we all have glimpses of it, where we fully understand that we come from that one source. So this expanded consciousness, which produces in a way this unity consciousness, I personally, in my experience, comes in a way, can only come after you have healed yourself and this unit me to the extent you can. And then it becomes quite, okay, they of course play into each other, of course, these two processes. But I think it's a process. And you said in your little clip that at the moment, it looks as if we are so divided and as if we are so away from that unity consciousness and that kind of unified consciousness. And some people say we behave like teenagers on this planet, and I think we are, and we need to grow up. And if you look at teenagers, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because teenagers have to say no. They have to kind of define themselves.
Right.
And the easiest way to do it is to just to rebel and to say no to absolutely everything and say, this is you, but this is me, and I'm completely different, you know. And this is something we need to shift from. We need to become adults, and adults in a good sense is really that we understand that duality and is me and you. And the easy way to define me is if I declare you as the enemy. Yeah? If the teenager declares mom to be the ultimate enemy, because then he or she can define themselves in opposite to. And I think this is where we have a real problem right now. And I think it's a step before maturity. And right now we are hanging in that the world has become chaotic and complex. And things are happening. And the easiest way for us to define ourselves as maybe the goodie and the others are the baddie is really to slip into this duality. But as it's a stage in development, if you look at development coming from this teenager idea, we are shortly before maturity, hopefully. So I see it as something which might be necessary at the moment for us to really properly wake up and say, as long as we keep this way of living in duality and fighting each other and defining each other in you are the enemy, so I am the goodie, you are the baddie, even because you just have another opinion than me. We cannot take that step forward. But because the world is such a difficult place at the moment, because we're in transformational times, I think it's a necessary step almost. And hopefully will show us that it doesn't work, that we need to move on. So I think that's where we are now. I feel we are on the cusp to going to more unified consciousness, but it's almost as if that can only happen if we realize that the way we're dealing with it doesn't work, that the duality doesn't work anymore, that we need to pull together and that we need to experience ourselves as one with other people, with nature, with all of life. And this is a difficult time to be in. It's this really a difficult time to make that leap. And sometimes, unfortunately, we have to be forced to make that leap. So to really experience that it doesn't work. And in the past, we had wars, you know. And then after that, we came together.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that we don't have to have a catastrophe, you know, before we actually realize we need to come together and we need to shift up a level. But I think it's a process. We're not doing that suddenly. I think it's a process which is ongoing, and I'm hopeful.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. Anyway, did I stray a bit much from where you see this project going? I can come back more to the intrapsychic if you feel you want me to do that.
I think what you just said was absolutely perfect. And I think our viewers, it's helping us to really understand what state the world is in right now and how, like, what direction we need to go in order to become unified.
Yeah.
It sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that we get to become more mature as a species, as
Yes,
humans
absolutely.
together.
Yeah.
So my question would be, how do we get there?
Mm,
So many of us are in duality right now,
yeah.
and we're doing the finger pointing thing,
Yeah.
making the other person the enemy because they think differently than we do.
Mm,
So how do we mature? Hopefully without a catastrophe. Is there a way for us to do this without having another war and
yeah.
going into more trauma?
Yeah, or going through the trauma of an ecological collapse. No? Because
Yeah.
I think at the moment is more on the cards than wars, or at least in a big war. Yes, how do we do that? It's a really good question. I do think it's a journey, and I feel you know about as much about that as I do in a way. And the journey is basically, individually speaking, it really starts with expanding your own consciousness. I really think that's important, to give ourselves on an almost daily level. No, on a daily level. No, I'm not tuning this down. On a daily level, the experience that we are actually consciousness, which is united with all other consciousness. And it's really important to understand that we are going on an energetic worldview here. As long as I am on a material worldview, of course, this is not united with that drum back there. No? But the moment I go onto an energetic worldview, I realize, of course, that underneath all of the manifested material reality is an energetic reality. That doesn't mean the same reality, it vibrates on different frequencies. But energy always, and there is no exception, has no boundaries. It vibrates on different frequencies, but it has no boundaries. And once we fully understand that, once we fully experience that, then it becomes so much easier to understand that we are all one. And then it becomes easier to understand that you are not my enemy. You just vibrate at this moment in time on a different frequency. And all together, we are making the world, we are making life as life is at this moment in time. How can we develop that consciousness? I believe through a really daily practice. And that's besides of all the other stuff we are doing. I do a morning ritual every morning. I turn into all directions. I give my thanks. I tune into it. I do ask in a way to be connected, and I really feel it. And the easiest way you can do that, if you just close your eyes for a moment, and that's really the first and easiest step, is just to connect with your own breath for a moment. It'd be nice if the people who watch that video could do it as well. And just begin to experience how with every breath you take, you're expanding. And with every exhale, you're contracting. So you're pulsating in a way. And if you do that 2 or 3 times, you can then, wherever it's easiest for you, be it your arms or your chest or your back or your head, imagine that you're expanding a little bit more, so that that outer layer begins to, in a way, connect with the space around you. And you might see colors behind your closed eyes. But the only thing you really need to do is to connect to your breathing and let yourself expand, and just for a moment get this knowing, that deep knowing that you are connected to the space. And this is almost enough. I'm going to open my eyes now. And it is really so simple. And if you do that 10 minutes each day, you develop this consciousness of that you and what's around you are not separate. Okay, this is a very basic exercise, but it is a knowing we need to develop, not just, not just, it's a cliche, we are all one, of course we are, everybody knows it by now in their heads, but we need to embody it, we need to really understand it. So this is just this connection with the wider fields, staying on the energetic level. A daily connection with the wider field is really, really important. Otherwise, we shrink back into this, but we are manifested. We are a body and a mind, and it's a manifestation of a much wider field of which we are part. And the more often we can experience ourselves as being part of that, the better. And of course, then there come the peak experience. Of course, you go to the Amazon and you take ayahuasca and you experience that in a way which is almost not negotiable anymore. You just then, poof, it blows your view of the world completely apart. But it's that daily experiencing. And I think what helped me over time, no matter how people behaved, I think one of the other things which we must just practice is really to understand that each human being comes from an incredible need to be loved and to be seen and to be accepted. No matter what we do, even if we scream and shout at somebody, underneath it all, this is our longing. We want to be loved, accepted, and connected. And if we recall that on and off, that the person who in a way annoys us or has such a different opinion to us, that what he or she expresses is the surface. And underneath it all, there is the same longing. I have the same longing you have, Kim. We are exactly the same on that level. We want to be embedded into something bigger. We want to be connected. We want to be loved. And we want to be seen and accepted as who and what we are. And once this is there, yeah, we have our ups and downs, but of course we do. But then we are able to just come from, I don't want to say love really, but just come from this you and I are the same in that. And then I can much easier connect with you. I think this is important. So this expansion, so experiencing ourselves daily as part of the field, however we do that. And leaving our beliefs in a way almost out. So doing that as neutrally as possible. Not to pray to a God, or not to say, I need to connect to this or that now, because then our belief systems come in. But just to kind of experience ourselves as part of a bigger field. And it goes faster and faster that you actually can dissolve and experience yourself as what you really are, pure and utter consciousness. And then seeing human beings as beings which are here with the same longings, that underneath it all, we long for being connected, being loved, and being fully accepted as who we are. And all the rest is superficial stuff. So I think that is an important thing to do. I think these are the two major ingredients, I would say, for expanding consciousness, but also developing the unifying consciousness. And the third one is, of course, to reconnect to earth and to nature. But I think that's something, once we do that properly as human beings, a lot of the horrendous stuff we are producing will just fall away because we can't do it any longer.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel where we are. And then, of course, as you know, and I guess others have talked about it, this will also bring us from the ill of our time, the fixation on the I, more to the we. That we are more think and talk about the we. And we meaning all of life, but firstly, of course, the human family, but then really all of life. That, and I feel the almost fixation onto the I was a necessary state, because we came from a very suppressed kind of development, and we needed to focus on ourselves for a while, but I think that should come to an end now. Self-development is not the non plus ultra any longer. We need to also come to this idea of the we, not that we see the exchange, that we cannot develop in isolation, that we need a collective shift, and the collective shift is about the we, and how we deal with each other, and how we treat the earth, and how we see life, and how we behave in this world, and how we see the other we's, the other species. So it has to go towards the we, but I think it will, because the necessity is there.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing, right? And because projects of this nature, where people are talking about unified consciousness and expanded consciousness and awakening and all of these terms that have really started to come about and be more prevalent, I think that is a sign that this is the time, like the need is now, and it's happening now that we get to shift.
Absolutely. I see that as well. And I also see that what happened before in Western societies especially was a necessary step. But you know, the sad thing is that we, of course, often take things too far. I mean, a healthy individualism and a healthy self-development has almost turned into narcissism now. You know, that we are, and that we are taking this too far, that and that shift to, as you just said, all these expressions point in the direction that people, that we understand that shift needs to happen, that we need to go more towards the we, and the we needs to include all of life. That is part of us, animals, plants, all of this, that these are life forms with as much right to be here than we have. Yeah. No, I mean, it's exciting in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
No,
I want to really kind of hone in on what you said about the I really being a necessary step, because I mean, even if you look at a typical human life, you know, look at a baby and a toddler, they start out in that developmental stage where they're learning how they are different than the world around them, how they're different from the people around them, and how they operate in the world around them. So that's how we start to understand ourselves and who we are as individuals. But then, like, there comes a point where it can't just be about us, and
no.
that's
And I think that's the point when we then choose almost, you know, I mean, of course, we marry, we have children, or we live in groups or whatever. We choose to a certain extent, and that comes with maturity, because you're absolutely right. The toddler or the child needs to develop a strong eye, and it's almost like you and me looking at it from a psychology point of view, this whole idea of that we don't need an ego. Of course we do. We need an eye to function in this world, and it has to be strong. And only then can we take the next step and basically say, okay, and now which parts of that can I, in a way, not subjugate, but not let go, not suppress, but bring into the group and say, okay, the well-being of the group might be more important than my little wish of something, God knows what it is. So how can I mature from the teenage state to the adult, to somebody who understands that the well-being of the whole group, like use a family or whatever, or a group that lives together, family not in the traditional sense, just a unit in a way, that the well-being of the whole unit sometimes asks me to step back and say, fine, if this was what it takes for the well-being of the whole unit, my little desire or wish just has to step back. And I think this is where we need to come to, and you're absolutely right. Before that, we need to develop to a level where it's actually easy to say it's not that important what I just right now want. And sometimes it really isn't. I find that we're more often with age now as well, just coming to the point where I think, all right, if this is your opinion and this, I'll just step back. I'm not going to argue. It's not that important.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another thing which has to, and it is shifting, isn't it? What is important to us? What is really important in life? And I think that's a question which is happening more. We see here in the UK, I don't know if you see it in the US, but we see a decline in consumerism to an extent. To an extent. And we see a kind of increase in people who can afford it, those people, of course, in booking adventure holidays and doing all kind of stuff. But they're coming more back to the experience rather than the consumption of goods and of things.
Yeah.
See that as a step in the right direction, because it is about the experience in the end. It is so our values are shifting a bit as well already. So it's all pointing in a certain direction. But you know, I wanted to say something. It doesn't leave my mind. I worked for a short period of time in Uganda after the civil war, and the trauma and the stuff I saw there was horrendous. I mean, we can't imagine it. But the child soldiers, when they came back to the original village, once people could go back after 20 years in refugee camps and so on, and there were lots of child soldiers with, by then, were middle-aged, not middle-aged, were adult men and women coming back from the jungle, and they needed to get back into their village. Now, into their village where they had been forced to commit massive atrocities. And it was really interesting. There were so many NGOs out there who did therapy. And I was one of them. What we learned very quickly is that no matter what therapeutic help people got, it didn't work if they were not accepted back into the village. The we was incredibly important in these small, still fairly tribal villages. because the we was the holding vessel of the individual. And it was only usually any techniques, anything only started to work once the village elder or the witch doctor, that's a different ballgame, started to do a ritual, and the village actually accepted the people back in. And then once this holding was there, this being safe and being held within the village, they could then work on their own trauma, very complex trauma. And I feel that this is something that was a bit dark right now, but that's something which we will gain when we shift that consciousness, that we are held again within a universal consciousness. And once we are held, once we experience that fully, that we are actually part of it and we are held within it. And it doesn't mean nothing bad will happen to us. It means that we are connected to something much bigger and wider than just ourselves. That will give us so much room to expand and to become what we really could become, because we're nowhere near what we can become as humans, nowhere near, in our development.
Yeah.
But I think this step to experience that unity and unified consciousness, which is everywhere around us and within us. We just need to allow ourselves to experience it. And then we will be held and we can grow and really move forward as a species.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. And so interesting too that they found that the therapy was not effective without that acceptance.
Yeah.
And
without that being held within the community again. Yeah. Because they didn't feel safe otherwise. How can you and I and everybody else feel safe in a world like this? We are not safe. But if we are embedded in a much bigger field, and we know that we are embedded in a much bigger field, we really know it, we really have experienced it again and again and again, we are safe. Because this is just a body, this is just one form of our life, is one manifested form. And then we are within a field, held within that field, and it's such a freeing experience. Like for the people in Africa on a different level. Yeah, it is interesting. And for me, I mean, it was an eye-opener, a real eye-opener to see this played out in front of me.
Right. And I'm wondering if we're in a position, like some of us, I'm sure some of the viewers watching are in a position where we don't feel safe, we don't feel connected. And I know you said that in Uganda they had someone do like an intervention, an experience. What could we do? We don't necessarily have someone who's gonna come and do that for us, but what could we do to feel safer within the world today?
Yeah, I think that's a really amazing question, because you are hitting at something here which we have lost. We have lost the elders and the community to do that with us and for us, and to do it on a regular basis with us. Because it's not just that one ritual, it is doing that on a regular basis to renew it again and again and again. And I really feel this is where groups really also come in, finding your tribe, where finding your tribe where you can do these things with. But I think from, and I will, the gift I'm offering, I feel if you do a daily ritual or a daily little ceremony, that really helps. And we haven't got the time to do that, and it's difficult to do over Zoom, but to just tune in a way a morning or an evening ritual, or just ask to be shown how you are held, so you can do a journey. But a ritual is quite good, you know, to just go into all the directions and just ask to be held by that direction, and then ask to be held by all there is, by this unified field. So just send it out there with a little ritual and watch what happens, and develop, yeah, in a way, cultivate that feeling, you know. The other thing I find which works for me, and it's for me, and it works for quite a few people, is not to forget to be grateful. And to do a little thanking, especially when it comes to the season. I just did with Itzhak, we did a Zoom, with Itzhak Berry, we did a Zoom equinox, and we did a little ritual just to basically thanking the earth, thanking our ancestors that we are here, you know, thanking all that gives us life on a daily basis. That helps as well, because all of this connects you back, and then you feel kind of, you know that you are held within something. So just doing that, and as I said, I have, well, I have given you, or I will give you a code where you can access and download, that people who watch this can access and download quite a good manual for how to do ceremonies, how to build them up from a very simple one to the more complex. And I think to do a bit of ceremonial work is really good, and to meditate, to tune in to that field, however you do it best. Yeah. Because different people, different things work for different people. No, right. Not everybody can, for example, for some people, chanting works. For some people, just tuning into their breath and then expanding works. Because chanting produces a vibration. And at one point, suddenly, you are in vibration with the field around you. And you can really feel it, you experience it, you embody it. For some people, going into nature on a regular basis works. Gratitude rituals always work, I find. They bring you back to this idea that you are actually embedded in something, because it sustains you on a daily basis. Yeah. Anything which expands consciousness, but not so much in the sense of just visualizing. It's really in embodying, just feeling these energies, being part of something. Your tribe, find a tribe. Easier said than done, you know. It's not that easy, is it, to find like-minded people where you can do a ceremony with, and a ritual with, and a journey with, and some meditation with, so that you do it in a group, maybe every 2 weeks at least, you know. That is a good way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard recently who has said that it's not easy to find that tribe, you know.
It's not. What I find works for me, but then I work in that field like you do, and what works for me, I'm sending it out. I'm sending it out during my little morning ritual, and I try not to do it in give me, give me, give me. I can kind of do that ritual for half a year and not ask for one thing. But if there is something I really want to manifest, I often send it out and just say, can I have some help with? and then you have to be courageous enough to grab it when the opportunity comes, because you can't send it out and then say, oh, well, I didn't want it in that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, sending it out, sending that wish out that you want to find your tribe and feel more embedded within a group. If you do that, I find, if you do that for a while, usually things show up. And just remembering that other people have the same longing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's also a problem of our age, isn't it? Of our individualized age. We are all so busy that actually the being with a tribe comes last.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
We're so busy individually. And I think that's also something which needs to shift. You know, we have to shift our priorities a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that I really think that that is important for people to hear right now. That it's okay to set aside time for family, or to say, you know, every, I don't know, every Friday for an hour, I'm gonna talk to a dear friend of mine or something, and to
Absolutely.
make that a priority.
It is, and I know people. I mean, I have friends who, I mean, they live closer together, who meet up every Monday evening, and they just do some drumming together, you know, and they do it, and they have made it a priority. And of course, every single one of them, there's five women, every single one of them has something better to do on and off, and they don't. They just have made it a priority and said, we're doing it every. And I mean, they're forming a good tribe. It's, I really think it's that shift of priority, because, and I think it's worse in the US than in Europe, the belief that we are constantly have to work, and, you know, climb these ladders and do better and do more. And we completely become so isolated. I mean, loneliness is a big problem these days.
Yeah.
And so finding a tribe and then making it a priority to build that, I think that's another facet which we need to develop.
Yeah, so important for people to take that time. And how can we be unified if we don't take the time to be unified, right?
Exactly. If we don't take the time to talk to each other anymore, or to do something nice together, you know, or it's, how can we be unified?
Yeah.
How can we ever be unified? You know, I mean, talking to each other is one thing, and then the other is, of course, to just, like, as teachers, we know that a bit. You teach by example. You just do the things, you know, and then hope in a way that people will join in. When we founded Sacred Earth Activism, there's only 2 of us. It's a big group now, and we're doing all kinds of things, but we just did. And then I read something interesting. Maybe that's the last thing I say. An Aboriginal elder who wrote a book. He's also a professor, you know. I mean, these people are usually, they blow your mind. But anyway, and he said something interesting. He said, everything is so complex now and so controlled and changes so rapidly that our biggest task is to facilitate spaces where people can expand consciousness. And it is the facilitating of spaces rather than creating spaces and holding environments where people can, rather than trying to push it in a certain direction, because we are very split at the moment. It's just to create and facilitate the spaces in a way we feel is right. And then the people who are held and assisted within those spaces, they will come. Rather than trying to argue and to convince and to preach and to teach, just create the spaces, create the holding environments for people then to come and to do the things which will expand their consciousness. And that creates a unified consciousness within that group without having to come to a level where it just becomes very argumentative. And if enough of these spaces, as I said before, enough of these, if we're weaving that web, each and every one of us can do things like that, then hopefully we will get that shift at one point.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's the way you described that, it just sounds so natural and just organic, you
It
know,
is
allowing that.
It's an organic way of going about it now, of weaving that web. It's I don't believe the one big idea will come, Kim. You know, these times are over. We are going into a collective time, and collectively we weave in a web.
Mm.
And that is where our focus in a way should lie. The one big idea won't come. The savior won't come. These times are over. We are going, if we want a real shift, we need a shift towards a unified consciousnness, as you so rightly say, which we can only achieve collectively, but we cannot push a huge a whole collective in one direction. It needs to come by building a web. Like nature is a web, it's a web of life. And if we can do that, something will shift.
Yes. That's so beautiful. I love the idea. It allows each of us to just share our gifts with the
does.
world and hold
Exactly.
that space for each other.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I think on this note, you stop. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's you find your gifts, you put them out there, you share them, and you become part of that web, and others will join you. They will.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
It becomes that unit. And we could talk about that for another hour because
I know.
but that's exactly it. You got it. That's exactly it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, so beautiful, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Christa, for just coming and sharing your light with us and weaving your web that we get to be a part of. And it's just been so beautiful. So beautiful.
Thank you very much, Kim, for inviting me. It's really appreciated. And it was so lovely to meet you a bit more. Even I talked most of the time, but thank you ever so much. And greetings from the UK.
Yes, yeah. Everyone watching is, I think, gonna just be so excited to hear this. So it's a true gift and a huge treat for all of us. And to the viewers, of course, we want to acknowledge each and every one of you for taking this time out of your busy schedule to be here and to learn and to receive all of this wisdom from Christa. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Christa.
Yes.
And
thank you to everybody who is watching it. Thank you, Kim.
absolutely. Thanks for watching, everybody.